My name is Nathan. I work at the college on a team called the Online Learning Center, or the OLC. And my role focuses really heavily on eConestoga. So training faculty with eConestoga, but also providing technical ongoing support with eConestoga. So you'll notice on the slide that I've got on the screen right now, you can email me at this eConestoga email address with any technical questions that you've got, or you're looking to use a tool for the first time, you're looking for some training. We have some resources online, but I can point you to those if they exist. And if not, then we'll get together and we can do some one-on-one training, or we can do a drop-in sort of thing. There's also a 24/7 phone number. That's not me. Thankfully, I'm not the person answering the phone 24/7, but that's outsourced through the software vendor, and they're very familiar with the technical product, obviously, so they can answer your questions there. And then something we've been doing for the last few months is virtual drop-in. So using Zoom like I am right now, you can drop in and chat with me basically any day of the week, Monday to Friday, in the morning from 10 to 11, or in the afternoon from 2 to 4. And the link is on the eConestoga homepage. If you log right in, it'll be on the right-hand side. So I'm available for drop-in, and yeah, I've found the drop-ins to be really successful. Some people, saying that in chat as well. Thanks for the kind words. I love that format. I think it works great. I would be shocked if we don't continue some version of virtual drop-in forever. I think we really will. There will still be some amount of face-to-face when we have the opportunity to. That's great too. But the virtual drop-in has been really successful. One of us shares a screen. We can talk eConestoga, and it's great. I enjoy it, and I get my sort of daily dose of social interaction from that as well. So please do drop in. Otherwise, it gets boring and lonely. So. Anyways, that's a little bit about me. This particular workshop is titled eConestoga Student Engagement and Progress Tracking. So this was something that about a month ago started to creep into the back of my mind as something that I haven't done a lot of traditional training on, but now more than ever is really relevant. We're all using this eConestoga platform more than ever. And what's really missing is, in the past, you've had a face-to-face opportunity to physically see your class and see who's showing up and who isn't, who seems engaged and who isn't, who's asking questions and who isn't. And we're missing that now. What's the best version of that we can do online? And that's not something I've traditionally done a lot of training on, because you have those face-to-face check-ins, or you're able to, sort of see who's submitting and who's not, but also just who's showing up and who isn't. But there are some tools online. There are some nice spaces in eConestoga where you can get a feel for who's logging in. Not only are they logging in, are they viewing content, the content that you've posted for them? Are they spending a lot of time on that content? And then are they participating in the various tools? Some of those might be optional, but again, they may be tools that you're leveraging now more than ever. We're talking about the discussion tool, right? For maybe asking questions, chatting with each other, working in groups. And so there are various workflows in eConestoga, not all of which are very intuitive, but that's what I'm here for. And they give you some insight. They can give you some insight into this platform and who's showing up and what they're doing when they show up. So the agenda, roughly speaking here, is going to be starting with how you can basically see some of the activity, including who's logging in and when they last logged in, some of the progress that they've made, and in particular, as I mentioned, content viewing. I mentioned some of this isn't super intuitive. There are 5 different screens that contain combinations of this information, 5 different places to go, depending on specifically what you're looking for or exactly how you want it presented. So I'm going to show you all 5. There's some overlap for sure, but every screen has its own little quirks, and it tells you little bits and pieces to give you a more whole picture. So again, that's what I'm here for. I'm going to point out all 5, and you'll know where to look and maybe build in some habits for checking in on those. I'm going to be demonstrating using the checklist tool, another tool that I think now more than ever may be really helpful to put in front of students, but also it gives you insight. So basically the checklist tool is something you can set up with weekly tasks. Students are the ones who basically self-identify that they've completed them. It's not an automatic, when this is done, then their box gets checked. It's sort of honor system, but But again, you're putting some of that ownership on the student to stay on track, but you're also setting the expectations very clearly with this checklist. And the checklist tool, where it gets really great, is that you can see at a glance which of your students have identified as checking off all the boxes, let's say for week 1 or week 2. And it gives you some information on who you might want to reach out to. It tells you one of two things: either they're actually following along and they're completing the content, but they're not using the checklist tool. They just haven't checked the boxes, but they are done, or they're not done. They're not actually following along. And it's another one of these tools that might help you identify people who are falling a little bit behind or are not engaged as much as you'd hope to keep on the right track. So I like the checklist tool a lot for some of the opportunities it provides there. We're going to talk about one of the coolest named tools, although it's not the coolest tool. It has some limitations too, but the intelligent agent tool is something that that we can absolutely use to basically automate some of the communication, but it also gives you insight into potentially things like who hasn't logged in 7 days. You can actually set up a process that can run once a week or twice a week or however often that scans for you and says who hasn't logged in the last 7 days. If you want to notify them and yourself, you can set up an email to accompany that. Automatically gets sent out. You template it, and you can even drop in some variables so it says the student's first name. Hey, Johnny, haven't seen you in a few days. Please log in when you have a chance. I'm posting lots of important content there. So we're going to build an example with the intelligent agent tool. And again, the cool thing about it is you can set it up to run once a week, and then it's completely hands off, but you and your students benefit potentially from those automated messages. I'm going to touch briefly on the awards and badge tool. It's not going to be a huge focus of this workshop, but there's an interesting opportunity there to actually build in sort of aggregate checks on whether students have completed what you want them to complete. And it can sort of let the students know and yourself know whether they've completed the sort of like a bundle of tasks and aggregate those into like a badge per week or a badge for certain tools. And then leading out of the awards and badge discussion, we'll talk a little bit more about these things called release conditions in the system. Release conditions are going to basically let us set up sort of criteria, or I guess triggers is how I usually describe it, to say when the student has done X or Y or Z, based on all the data that the system can track, I want to either release something or make something available or send an announcement. So it's a little bit of you building in the progress that you want tracked, but also the students potentially getting either some additional information or getting their next steps or getting new instructions when the system has identified that they've completed those criteria. And then if there's time, and there probably won't be, I always really aggressively try to fill these workshops with more than I have time for. But if there's time at the end, or for people who may want to stick around a little late, I'll give you a sneak preview of a custom thing that I'm working on to actually put a little bit more of this progress in one place rather than, let's say, the 5 that exist right now. This is something that I'm working on building that I can kind of show you what's coming in a couple of months. All right. So let me jump out of this PowerPoint. There's not much to this PowerPoint. It's just my name and the agenda. Everything from this point on is going to be just in eConestoga. So before I jump right ahead, I'll just make sure that I was properly sharing my screen. So now that I've closed PowerPoint, you can see my browser with eConestoga. The homepage loaded up. Okay, yes, in chat. Perfect, thank you. So let's get started. So the first thing, as I mentioned, I want to talk about is in your course, how can you see student activity, student logins? Not just are they logging in, are they accessing your course? And those two components working together paint a bit of a picture with your student as well. If you can see that they're logging into eConestoga very regularly, but not specifically accessing your course very regularly, that's something you may want to follow up on or better understand. So we'll go into a particular course here. I've picked out a few live courses, and what I'm going to do is, well, just so you're aware, for the sake of privacy, I've switched over the role that I'm currently viewing this as to a role that's not going to show me students' last names or student ID numbers. Those are things you would typically see within these tools and help you identify your students. I'm just trying to basically hide that information for the sake of this workshop and the recording that will get posted. So that's a disclaimer. Everything else, though, in terms of the clicks and what you'll see will be the same. So I'm going to go to, first of all, I'm going to go to the course admin area. I'm going to have to try to remember to keep all 5 of these different screens straight in my head as I go through them. The first one we're going to access through course admin. So it's not in content or course tools. We're going to go to this course admin link. This space in course admin is not something that you are going to typically access day to day, but there are some useful things that are sort of buried away, hidden away here. And one of the ones that I like the most is this class progress area. The other thing I'll mention is when you go to course admin, your sort for these tools will either be based on category or they'll just be based on name. So whichever of these 2 different sorting mechanisms you have, if it's category, you'll find it under learner management, and if it's name, then you'll just look under C. So we're looking for this class progress tool. And when we get to class progress, what you're going to see is a list of all of your students. Again, this is a dynamic list. Oh, you want me to zoom in? Absolutely. Yeah, sorry, that's a great idea. I'll try to get it zoomed to the point where text is a little bit better, but I'm not scrolling horizontally, if that makes sense. Thanks for the feedback in chat. So again, we went to course admin and then class progress. And here we'll see, to start, we have a list of all of our students, and there's multiple pages worth. A lot of these screens in eConestoga will have a really small number per page. I basically always will just go to the bottom and set it to be a larger number so that I can see all of my students here on one page, or at least as many as possible. There is not a way, I don't think, to change that default. You're just going to have to change it every other day or so, which is unfortunate. So we can see our people here, and you can see some stuff at a glance. We're going to be able to actually, even using this tool, dive deeper into a lot more specific data for specific people and specific tools. But at a glance here, we can see how much of the content completed they've currently gotten through. To define what content completion means, we're talking about things that you've made available in the content tool. So these are things that you've posted in those sort of module topic structure and made available. And completed really just means viewed it at least once for at least a second. Like it's not a really nuanced definition of complete. It's just did they go there? But we can see again more data about how much time they spent and all that on some of these other screens. So at a glance, you can see how much of the content they've made their way through. So if I'm looking to highlight some people right away, I can start to see that some people haven't accessed any content, whereas some people have presumably gone into the course information module or the start of week 1 or something, right? So you can start to identify a few people here. You can also see at a glance, we have some login history, and we also have grades right now. Basically, these are the graded items that may be already captured, and this will change over time. What I want to show you as well, though, is that if I want to dive deeper into any one of these people and see more than just the overview that I've got on my screen, I can actually click on that student's name, and I'm now in a view dedicated to just this student. And I can basically scroll down and I can look into each of these different tools for even more information. So let me show you content as an example. If I go to this content view, remember we saw that they had completed four of the pages, or for approximately 3 or 4%, right? 4 out of 91 in this case. Well, if I wanted to know which pages based on this student, I could do that. I can see that they haven't completed, viewed the course schedule, but going down in here into lectures, they viewed 2 of the lectures, and I can expand that. And I can see, okay, in chapter 1, they viewed chapter 1 data analytics overview, and that was it. 1 of 3 pages there. But I can see that they spent 17 minutes there. So if that was PowerPoint slides, etc. Yeah, and when I'm talking about logins in this context, for the people asking in chat, login is, I believe, eConestoga access. But on the other screens that I'm about to show you, including this one when I scroll down a little further, we're going to see course access listed separately from login. So right now I'm on a particular student, and as I mentioned, I can really drill down into their content activity. But there's other tools down here at the bottom, like login history. So if I scroll down to login history for this student, I can see 22 logins, last access today. These are system logins. These are eConestoga logins, not specifically your class. But you can look at this, and then you can click here on your course access tab. This course access tab is specific now to this shell, your shell, the one that I'm in this course progress tool for. So I can see that even though they've been actively in eConestoga today, May 26th, the last time they actually accessed this course shell was on the 22nd. And it's now been 3 days since then. So you can see some of that stuff highlighted here. I'm gonna double check that I haven't missed any of these questions. In terms of the content view, I don't believe there's, you can do like a bulk expand here. So you're really kind of actively drilling down into the various levels of detail. But again, there's 4 more screens, some of which also show you content progress. Some of those may be presented in a way that are a little bit better for you at a glance. There's definitely going to be some overlap in the 5 screens that I show you in particular with content viewing. And a question about content progress applying to video PowerPoints. Yeah, it means that they viewed the PowerPoint file, whether it has a video in it or not. And as long as they're still viewing that content in eConestoga, then the clock is ticking. So if you posted a video PowerPoint and turned that into a page available in content, then if they're viewing that in eConestoga, not only does it count as completed when they view it, but the clock is ticking. And so it's especially informative for things like videos. If you posted a 5-minute video, you can go in here and see how many people spent 5 minutes on that page. But the asterisk on that is some students will just download your file and view it offline. And as soon as they do that, you're not going to have that timer anymore. The system just loses track of whether they're viewing it. So you will actually see, if it's a particular page, it'll actually show you that they downloaded it here as well. So you get a sense for that, and you'll be able to piece together, for instance, if they have a shorter amount of time. Can we share, auto share with students so they can see this? Students can see their content progress in different ways. They can already see content progress in the content tool. And when I get to if I have time at the end, the preview of the custom tool that I'm building, that's going to actually show students their own content progress right on the home page of each course. But you can't do anything within this tool to sort of decide to make this view available for your students as well. And another question here, is there a way that students might access this content without the system acknowledging it? Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the system is doing its best to sort of keep track of the fact that they viewed content or not. Would I bet my life on it being 100% accurate? No. It's information that is probably right 99% of the time at least, but I wouldn't say that it's 100. And at the scale that we're often talking across, you know, every course, every student, every page, every second spent, I absolutely wouldn't bet my life on it. But there's no specific workflows that you know, that are standard that would not trigger content completion unless you're doing a lot of linking to your pages, but like not even linking to them, like linking to the full screen view, which I would have to spend about 4 minutes now if I were to show you even how to do that. So I think it's unlikely that that's happening very often. So hopefully that's a satisfying enough answer. You can't bank on this, I guess. You know, you wouldn't be able to say 100% this student cheated because they didn't see the assignment instructions and then they submit the thing to me.
It totally is, Nathan. Thanks very much. But just, do you have any insight as to why that feedback thing might be happening other than just
I don't know.
Okay.
If that's something you're interested in following up about, especially if you have a specific example, like this student, this assignment, we can submit a ticket to D2L about that sort of thing. But I don't have insight specifically about why it might not trigger. They might for sure. It's a ticket we could create.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no worries. So you can see here, I mean, there's a lot of tools. I'm not going to go through each one. but you can get a glance of student participation. I'm going to point out the fact that checklist is here as well. We're going to come back to checklist after we've actually made one. But also course access, login, and content are the three things here that I would typically look at the most closely on this one of the 5 different progress type views. The other one actually that I would say is the next tier is discussions, depending on if you use the discussion tool. Because right now, again, I'm in a particular student view, right? And if I wanted to look at this student's participation in discussions across the whole course, it does a better job of aggregating this than the discussion tool does, right? Because when you're in the discussion tool, you'd have to sort of go thread by thread and find that person. Here, you can find all of this student's activity across all discussions. And not only can you see at a glance how many times they've created a new post, which is thread created, versus replying to their peers, you can also see how many of the other ones they've sort of expanded and read. So you'll get a sense for how engaged in the discussion tool they actually are. If they're just posting because it's required, but never reading any others or replying to any others, you can see that at a glance here in the course class progress tool. All right, so that's 1 of 5. The next one that I want to show you is in the class list area. It's not nearly as detailed, but it has some information at a glance, so I'll show you that. Instead of going through course admin class progress, if you just go to course tools class list, and this is again where my view is a little bit different because you're not seeing full names and you're not seeing a column here for their student numbers and things. Because of that, actually, your table here will typically be wider to the point where you'll actually have to click an arrow on the right to get to the last column. But I wanted to point out that there is a last accessed column here. And this last accessed column is the course access data, not the login data. So even here in the class list tool, at a glance, you can basically see the last time they were in your course. So you can sort of just head here if you didn't need any to dive deeper into content, into discussions, etc. That's technically 2, because again, there's overlapping data here. Page number 3, also accessed through the class list tool, is this class engagement view. If I click here on class engagement, we'll see a different dashboard with some overlapping information. Again, it shows me a class list. Now it's going to show me their grade based on the way the gradebook is set up and based on what's been graded and completed so far. They show me again here last visited, which is this particular course. And this one in particular also summarizes discussion stuff. So this is 1 click rather than a couple of clicks into the class progress tool, but it's somewhat redundant here. So most of what you see here we already saw, but there's a couple of nice filters here that you can only really do here. One of them is based on last access in the last 7 days. Here's my whole class list, right? And if I was to go down this list, I would see a lot of like 4-day, 1 day, 3 days. This actually builds in the feature that says, hey, if you want to focus on just the students who haven't accessed in the past 7 days, you can actually click here on this tile. And now I'm looking at just the 3 students who have not accessed in the last week. Unfortunately, here on this screen, you can't configure like a different threshold. You can't say, well, I'm more interested in every 2 days or every 12 days. It's just hard coded to be 7, but it is somewhat informative here. And I can turn that filter off and on by clicking on it. The other thing that I can do is I can filter by where they fall in the current grade distribution. So I can, for instance, say, hey, show me the students who are in the 90 to 100. Great, here's my 90 to 100. Or show me the students who are, if I uncheck that one, between 0 and 50, because those are the 2 that are possible. There aren't any other data points for these ones, so I can't click anything here. So if I want to focus in on students who are below a certain grade threshold, this is kind of the best screen to do that. But everything else is kind of redundant. So that's page number 3 of where you may find data on progress and engagement, depending on what you want. This page, I'll remind you, is still under the class list tool. You go to course tools class list, but then you click on this class engagement button up above. Number 4, we're going to find in the content tool itself. So if I click here on content, something I wanted to point out on a page-by-page basis, you can get a pretty quick glance of who has viewed this page. So let's say, for instance, at this point, I go to the course schedule and I wanted to look at, only one of these is visible to students, so I'll pick that one. This is a spreadsheet apparently, but again, any of these pages will be fine. If you click on a particular page in your content tool, the first thing you'll see is a preview just like your students. You can download it like your students can. That's not what I'm here to show you. Below this preview area, on any particular page posted in content, you can actually click on a different tab. Really easy to miss, because normally you'll just see activity details here, which doesn't tell you much. You can actually, on the page itself, scroll down and click on completion summary. Completion summary is going to show you your class list again, focus now just on this particular page, who has completed it, and specifically when did they complete it. So you may really care that they are in the habit of viewing something before or just after a class. Yeah, it's so hidden away, right? It's so easy to miss. There's a million places that you just wouldn't naturally stumble on that are actually very useful. It is going to indicate that they've downloaded pages. I don't recall if it shows you that here. I think that it does. It definitely shows you on that previous screen that I also shared, which was going through course tools, or sorry, not course tools. The page number 1, which was course admin class progress. Yeah, downloaded would still, they'd have to actually, yeah, downloaded would still trigger completed as well. And it would, I think it shows it downloaded here as well. But it definitely shows it on that first screen. If you wanted to show, if you wanted to select people who have not completed the page and email them, there's not a workflow for that on this screen, unfortunately. You can filter down to incomplete, but it's not going to let you like bulk check and compose an email like some other tools do. I'm going to show you basically that exact thing in the assignment tool a little later on, just as a 30-second tip. Unfortunately, not here. This one is no longer on class list. This one's actually in content itself. If you go into content and you go to a particular page, let me go to lecture chapter 1. Here's my PowerPoint. Let's see how many students have viewed this PowerPoint. If I scroll down on the content page, what I just was showing you is accessed under this completion summary tab. So I click on completion summary. Let's see if we can find anyone who's downloaded it here. If I don't see any downloads, it's not conclusive, obviously, but I don't see it telling me that they've downloaded it here. But I can see who's done it and when, and I can get a list at least of people who are, for instance, not complete. There's one more place I'm going to show you in the content tool that actually does a better job of aggregating content progress, but still allowing you to dive into who has completed what. Well, viewing would be just loading it online. Like viewing it would just be, did they navigate here in eConestoga, click on the link in content, and they're just looking at it here like I'm looking at it here. That would be considered viewing it. Downloading it would be if they actually click the download button here, or if they click download at the top and they select that option. The page number 5 I want to show you, which has some interesting data, it's still in content, but it's specifically at the top level of content. So when you go into the content tool, it's going to remember where you last were. Right now I'm in chapter 1, etc. You want to get to the very top level again, and to do that, you would actually click on table of contents on the left-hand side, the very top item here. So click on table of contents. It's the only way you can access this next screen. Super buried away. Click on table of contents. Then you click on related tools, view reports. Honestly, even I used this platform for years before I found this page. We go to table of contents, related tools, view reports. And now I have another view of content, this one doing a little bit more aggregating for me, still though page by page, and I can still do some filtering if I wanted to based on who has and hasn't viewed this page. But it gives you some averages, which you just can't see elsewhere. Very interesting, maybe again informative for how engaged students are on your videos that you've posted. Here's every content page. You absolutely can download this into Excel. You would click export statistics here. And because this is a snapshot in time, right? This is always going to be evolving as more students view more content. But if you want a snapshot week by week and you want to hang on to that as an artifact, just get in the habit of not only going to this page, but clicking here on export statistics. And you'll have the ability to get a spreadsheet version of it. So let's say, for instance, okay, here's again is my instructional plan. Well, I can see now at a glance that the average time spent for the 16 people who have viewed it is 5 minutes. All right. But again, if I want to know more, I can click on the number here. I can see the 16 students, right? Or I can again go here to show search options and I can start to like filter things down. But here are all of the students, including the 16 who have, when did they view it? How much time did they spend? Their average versus again, if they have more than one view, it splits that into in this case. Yeah, it's visits to this particular page now. In the context that we're at, it's how many different times did they navigate to that content item in your content tool. And then it spreads out the total time spent and breaks it down to average per click, which is essentially a separate session on that page. And there's some interesting filters here. Again, you can filter by only those who haven't. And I would click on this and click search, and I would that would apply that filter, I believe. So here are my people. Kind of frustrating. I still don't think I have the ability to compose an email message here from this, which is too bad. Because that's definitely something you may do. Hey, just noticed you haven't read these assignment instructions yet. Noticed you haven't looked at our instructional plan yet, etc. But you can get a list. And again, you would typically see more information here, like their first and last name. I'm just not seeing that with the special user I created for today. So that's all 5 pages. Again, a good amount of overlap. And depending on exactly what you're trying to do, there's a reason to go to any one of them. A lot of data though, a lot of data behind the scenes, which is really, really helpful to get a sense, even if it's just, course access that you're looking at, right? That can still be really informative. So the next thing I want to demonstrate, what is SCORM is a question I'm going to skip. SCORM is, there's a lot going on with SCORM. The only way that it would really come up or be relevant for you is if you're building a lot of content in something like Articulate or Captivate and exporting packages, like you've built your own little self-contained module. Other than that, it's a tool developers would use to build custom content that communicates with the platform. So it's a convention for development. Yeah, there's another good summary actually. It has to do with programming. It's like a platform standard way of having your custom content communicate with a learning management system. So SCORM is something that can communicate with this platform, which you might know as eConestoga or D2L or Brightspace. It would also work with Blackboard or Canvas, right? So it's the idea is you've made a portable content module. But that's all I'll say for now. The next thing I want to do is I want to talk about the checklist tool. So we've already seen that a lot of things in terms of student actions are tracked automatically, and you can go in and sort of see those things if you're willing to spend the time navigating through those pages. But there's a lot of value, I think, in building a checklist that the students just identify when they've completed certain things. Some of it can't be tracked even in the system, and some of it, you just want them in the habit of even logging online and confirming for you that they've read the thing, that they've watched the video, whether they downloaded it or whatever. They're telling you, yes, I've done this thing. Just kind of, again, it's an honor system thing, but it does allow you to see at a glance which students are checking those boxes or not, and it may give you a reason to reach out. So the checklist tool is harder to get to than I would have liked. I've for the last couple of years, I've lobbied for it to show up here under our course tools dropdown, but I always lose the argument because it's already such a long list. But I think now more than ever is the time for the checklist tool to shine. You can always access it anyways through Course Admin as well. Course Admin is really the full list of everything, and whereas Course Tools is sort of a curated custom dropdown that we've created. So under Course Admin, we can go to the checklist tool. Course admin, checklists. Again, at the end of the day, what we're making here, before I go through the step-by-step, we're building a list that a student can actually interact with and check boxes, and the system will remember which boxes they've checked. When they come back, it'll remember what they've already done and what they haven't. It's something that the student can see and you can see as a way of communicating, like, are you following along with my expectations? There's other value in making this checklist beyond just setting expectations. You can actually make it very linked. So you can have direct pathway from the checklist to the content you want them to view, or to the assignment that you want them to submit to, or to the quiz that they need to complete. So it can, you can build it into their habits and their workflows so that, you make it really easy for them to look at the checklist and then say, oh yeah, now I want to do the quiz. They already have a direct link to it. And yeah, so I'm going to show you how you would create those links in addition to just listing what items are expected. So first thing we would do is we'd say new checklist. What is the reason for this checklist? My particular example here in the sandbox I'm going to be working in is just week 1, everything in week 1, the various things that I want them to do. You can absolutely link to the instructional plan, absolutely. And that could be a part of your week 1 plan. I want you to view the instructional plan. Here's a link. Check this box to tell me when you've done that. You're really setting the expectation and that's something you want them to do. It's important enough. You gave them a checklist for it. Yeah, and students appreciate it, especially for assignments. So you could think of it this way, right? The scope of this checklist can be large, small. It could be, here's everything I want you to do in week 1. Or it could be, here are the 5 tasks that you need to do just to complete assignment 1, right? It's some small piece of week 1, but here are the 5 steps to creating the assignment. Do your draft, then, revise your draft, get up here to look at it. Then you submit it to the Turnitin folder. Then you submit it to the final folder. That could be your checklist. Can you link a checklist to a checklist? Yeah, you can link anything. You could link a big checklist to a small checklist. No, I'm joking around. I mean, that's a fine question, and there's a case for it. It's all good. All right, we're making a week 1 checklist for now. We'll aim kind of larger in scope here because I have some content populated for week 1. All we're doing right now, though, is giving it a name, giving it an optional description. These are all of the tasks I expect you to complete in week 1. It's an opportunity for you to communicate, right? All of these things, especially now that we're getting into tools, they're trying to sort of fill in the gaps that you don't have face-to-face anymore, and I think checklists can help a little bit with that. Here's the things that I would have told you to do in person, to be successful. I like opening the checklist in a new window, although it doesn't really matter. And I click save here. So all I've done so far is I've given it a name and a description. You'll notice though, after I've clicked save to sort of create a new checklist, I now have the ability to start to add content to it. I can populate it now. This creation process, a little bit different than other tools. You make it and then you can populate it. Whereas other tools, you just create it and all of the tabs of options are already there. We have to start by making a category. Even if you just have a bunch of items all related to week 1, we've already called our checklist week 1, we still have to make a category called week 1. Week 1 items. Kind of like in the discussion tool, you have to make a forum before you can make a topic, just the way that it's structured. So I can say save, and this could be the only category that I have where we'll put every item into this. So I've got week 1, my week 1 items. There we go. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create the items themselves. This is where we're going to see that not only can it be a title and a description, but it can be a link. It could be a picture. Like it could be almost anything. So if I say new item, this is now one row in our checklist. Each one of these items is going to correspond to an actual box that a student can click. They can see the click, you can see the click. I know I keep saying that, but that's the value of this tool, is that you're going to get to be able to see what they've checked as well. So let's say, for instance, I had posted PowerPoint slide in my week 1 folder in content, viewed PowerPoint lecture. All right, so I'm telling them that's what it is, but we don't have to stop there. Down here in this description area, you'll notice we have this toolbar. And I can basically say here on using this insert quick link functionality. So the question in chat earlier was this, when I was describing links, is this basically a hyperlink? Yes. But inside this platform in particular, they have kind of a special term and a special feature called quick link. When you see the term quick link, it means that it's smart. It's built into the system to be kind of clever about pointing to a particular page or a particular tool that you've already set up in this course shell. The scope is going to be the course shell that I'm in. I can't go outside of that for quick linking. But the nice thing about this quick link is that it's smart enough so that if I copy this course into a new shell for next semester, all of those links get updated automatically. So there's no danger of me having to remake my checklist every semester just because I've copied it to a new course that technically has a new URL, right? A new pathway. So quick links are very smart. So there's no danger in adding those to places like this. So I can basically click on this insert quick link option. These are all the different tools that I can link to. And you'll see to your question earlier, I can link to a checklist from within a checklist. But you'll also notice content. You'll also notice assignments. You'll also notice quizzes, any of the things you might be expecting a student to do. In this case, I already know that I've posted a page in my content area, a PowerPoint file, right? Let's make it easy for the student to find that in addition to having them check the box when they're done. So if I go into content here, I can find my week 1 folder and I can pick, let's say, my week 1 lecture PowerPoint page. That's just the link to it, right? You can also add some more context around this link. Click this link to access the PowerPoint file directly, and then the link. You could type it out and then click that link button. And yeah, and the question in chat is exactly what we're going to do. In fact, you basically will have to do that to make this checklist available to your students. So the final thing we're going to do is we're going to put this checklist itself into our content area. So we have both directions where students can kind of get where they need to go in terms of the activities. So I'm going to save this. You'll notice it's going into my week 1 items category. It's just the only category where we're going to have here. If I really wanted to have due dates, I could do that. If we really wanted to have a calendar item, which would show up on the homepage of the course, I can trigger that all from these checklist items. I'm going to say save. So I've got one item here in my checklist so far. I'm going to say another new item. I also, from the way that I've created this generic sandbox, I also know that I made a discussion that was intended for week 1, where maybe just students introduce themselves. Every student can just post, hey, this is my name, and instead of the face-to-face opportunity we might have had, this is how you can kind of let people know what brought you here, right? So I can have, for instance, a post to the introduction discussion. That's the task, that's the action item, and I can link to that. I can link to the discussion tool, to the exact discussion topic where I want my students to post. Yeah, you can absolutely have multiple categories in the checklist. You can have pre-work, work, after work, and it's all just grouped together for week 1. Or you could have 3 separate checklists, right? Each one with 1 category each. Students, unfortunately, can't make their own checklist, which I see a lot of value in too. But it's not something, unfortunately, that they can do. So you basically have to create this for them. So I have my reason for the checklist item, and then again, I can click on quick link. I can find the tool. In this case, it's the discussion tool. Because I know the discussion tool is already set up, I can go into the week 1 forum, and I can find the discussion topic that I already made. So now I have a link to it. I could provide additional instructions here, like tell us about your background and why you signed up for this course, So when they're using the checklist, they know what's expected, they know what to do, and they have a direct link to that page as well. I'll click save. Let me just take a look in my content area to see what else I maybe had expected them to do in week 1, because ultimately this week 1 area is kind of your launch pad as well, right? I know I had my introduce yourself page. I know I had the lecture. I had some additional resources. It looks like I also have an assignment, right? That is part of week 1. So I could start to build that into the checklist as well. So new item, I can say review assignment instructions. And I go quick link, content, week 1, assignment instructions. You'll notice at this point, I've just been going save and then new, back on the checklist tool. I can cut out one of those clicks by going save and new here. My next item is review, assignment, grading. Quick link, content, week 1, here's the rubric. And then finally, at the end of the week, I expect them to post, right? So I can finally say new item, post your assignment or upload or however you want to call it. Submit, I suppose, is the best of all of those. Description, quick link. This time we're going to the assignment tool. Then we go to assignment 1, save. Yeah, this is really going to help the students who are going to use it with time management, with organization, with understanding what's expected of them. Some students really need that structure, and they're the type of people who would probably have been reaching out to you in person when they had the chance, staying after class and asking for advice, that sort of thing, right? So this is kind of enabling that a little bit. Is there a way to have the quick link into the name rather than description? Unfortunately not. We're going to see in a second, though, it kind of just puts the name and the description in 2 rows, but it's not the worst thing in the world in terms of how it actually presents for the students themselves. So I'm going to say save and close right now. What we've basically done is we've made a checklist. I can preview this myself just here in the checklist tool as an instructor. I click on the arrow next to week 1, which is the name I gave this checklist, and I say preview in a new window. This is what it's going to look like for students. So you can see that it basically has the title next to the checkbox that a student can use, and it has links plus description if I had both, right? And clicking on the link would take me, for instance, into where I could actually post that. So the checklist exists. Remember earlier I mentioned I've been losing the battle on getting the checklist tool added to the course tools dropdown. That would have been how a student could access this tool and see all of their checklists for every week. But that doesn't exist, right? So what we really want to do as a final step for the checklist tool is we want to add it into content, or you could customize your nav bar, but most people aren't going to know how to do that or really want to mess with that either. I know the Content 85 course does, John, so you're good. You could definitely do that. So if I go into week 1, this is where the checklist is. Probably I even want it at the top of the week 1 folder, right? In content, I can go to existing activities, checklist, because now it exists, and I can choose my week 1 checklist. It's going to add it to the bottom, but I'm just going to drag it to the top. It's the first thing I want my students to see, because it really captures everything below it anyways. At this point, it doesn't matter to me if the student clicks on the checklist and then uses the checklist to go into the introduce yourself discussion or into the assignment instructions, or whether or not they just access those things through content, or whether they're in the habit of accessing it through the course tools dropdown. At the end of the day, all of those things are going to get the student where they need to go, but the checklist is what gives them the ability to say, I'm done this thing. I'm telling you that I'm done it, and I'm reminding myself that I'm done it, so they can really stay organized. You could absolutely have a submodule with all of the checklists. Yeah, and that's a great idea too. You could either put that into evaluations, you could make a module here at the root level. Question about printing it off. It won't make a very nice print. I mean, we can try really quickly. Your instincts are right. This platform does a really poor job of generating print resources. It's not something they clearly prioritize in development. As a student here, so the next thing I wanted to show you ultimately was, as a student, what does this look like? And what does the checkbox actually do, like when I check it and all that? So let me become a student here. I'm hoping this is going to let me impersonate somebody. Yeah, it doesn't give them the links, certainly. There's probably a way that you could print that, but it's going to not necessarily be formatted very well. If I become a particular student and I go in through content where I made that checklist available, I'm going to go to content. I'm going to go to my week 1 checklist. This is what it looks like to the student. Again, very similar to what we saw in preview. But what we can actually do here, and you can see the students able to see their progress checklist as a nice bar. For the students who this is going to motivate, the people who want to get to 100%, they want to know that they're checking every box. That's going to help them. It's visual and it lets them feel good about getting things done. Some amount of students are not at all motivated by progress bars and things. That's just the reality for sure. But it does kind of nicely highlight for them what they've done. And again, I mentioned this, but I'll show you. The student could finish these 3 things today, completely log out, show up on a different computer tomorrow. None of that matters. The tool remembers what boxes they checked. So right here, if I go into week 1 as a student, I can see that these three boxes are still checked. A couple of questions in chat. Can you explain the benefit of the checklist compared to using the progress tracker? Why not just set the progress tracker to manual so the students check it off? That's a really good point. The benefit of the checklist is that it's a little bit more of an aggregate view, and it's in one place as opposed to sort of seeing or having to check the boxes on every individual page. Some of these items are also, again, not necessarily going to be in content. So I would say the biggest thing is you could imagine this checklist might say at home, practice this thing. That's not online at all. It's not a content page at all. It's a thing that they just did at home. If this was a health course, the checklist could be, go for a walk each day. As an example, those are not things that you're going to have in content that you can check as complete. They're physical things you had to do at home. And so the checklist can combine those as well as the things that the system maybe can track in other ways. Nathan, why don't I have the option to impersonate? That's just an administration thing, unfortunately. I can see that there would be a lot of value in you being able to impersonate students, but it was a privacy decision that was made a policy many years ago and well above my decision-making ability. Is it possible to change order of the items? Absolutely. And I'm going to do that in a second, actually. Yeah, I mean, some of these things are going to be things they need to read in a textbook, and same kind of thing. Yeah, where they're not going to really have a digital object that corresponds in online. So if I go back to that checklist, you make things out of order. You definitely can reorder them. It would be really frustrating if you couldn't. You'd have to rebuild it just to get it in order. And order really kind of does matter often here. Sometimes they're scattered items, but a lot of the time there's an order of operations that you want to encourage. If I go here to edit my week 1 checklist, I can basically go to reorder here. So once I have my items, and I actually didn't even do this intentionally, but in my content, I had posting to the introduction before they view the lecture. That's probably how I want this to look as well. I can click on reorder and I can say, hey, thing, you were number 2, but now you're going to be number 1. And if I click save, that's the order that the students would now see this in addition to the order that I would see it in. Final thing then about checklists, I've mentioned this a bunch of times. You can see on a student by student basis which checklists they've actually identified as done or how far along they are on those checklists. That also happens back on the first of the 5 progress screens I shared with you, which is under course admin, class progress. Course admin, class progress, click on a particular student. We'll go into Gurmeet. I think that's the person I impersonated just now, although this is going to be bad if I didn't. And then, like I said, you go to the checklist tool. Now that you've actually used checklists, here I can see for Gurmeet, for the checklists, let's say I had 1 checklist per week, I can see how many of the overall checklists they've completed, and then the individual items. And then I can look checklist by checklist and see how many of those items they've checked. Can I not see which items they've checked? That's not great. But at a glance, at least, you can certainly see who's using this tool, who is saying they've finished for a week, and how much of the checklist, if it's partway through, they've actually gotten to. You may just need to reach out to them and ask them what they haven't finished or what they may be having issues with. But you'll be able to see that here in the class progress screen. So that's the checklist tool. I like it. You can link to a checklist from a checklist. You can link to a checklist from an announcement. You can embed it into content, which is what I just showed you. You can make that checklist available in a few different ways, but you'll want to do that. Just making the checklist is not enough because students don't typically have the direct link to the tool where they could browse through all of them. So you want to make sure that you're providing them with a pathway through an announcement or through the content. I think content is the best. All right. Next thing I think I want to show you here, I'm just going to pull up my personal agenda. My third screen logged out, unfortunately. Okay. We're going to talk about intelligent agents. Okay, when I was showing you all of these various progress views, one of the things that I really did focus on was when they last logged in, when they last accessed your course. Those are things that I think you'll want to look at a glance, and you have a couple of ways now where you could see that. But there's also a really neat tool that can allow you to automatically check and actually send off emails to both you and the students who maybe qualify based on having not logged in. And the way that you would access this tool is again through course admin. You're going to set this up on a course by course basis, although you can build one in one course and then copy it into another. The same is true, by the way, for checklists. As I mentioned, the quick linking in checklists means that if you make this in one of your two sections and then copy it into the second section, it'll be smart enough to make all those links still work. Same is true for setting up an intelligent agent. You build the template for how often does it check, what is it looking for, what does the email say. You could copy that into another course and then schedule that one as well. So under course admin, intelligent agents, which for me is under communication here, what you can basically do is create a new agent. Before we create an agent though, there's one thing in settings that I really want to point out. Because it's a default that doesn't work in your favor for actually having the email sent from this tool, if that's how you plan to use it. So what you'll want to do first in the intelligent agent tool is go to this settings screen. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to set a custom value for the email. We're in a world now where the course mail tool has been thrown away as a separate tool for communication, and it's just leveraging your faculty email now, which is great. It's been asked for quite a bit. This is also going to send, when you set this value, basically from whatever address you want. But in particular, there's more reason than ever to have this be from the same faculty email that you're going to use everywhere else. And you can also do things like set your name. But you definitely want to do this. Otherwise, it's going to look like the email was sent to your students from this generic address. And a student who's not paying attention will click reply saying, hey, sorry, this is the reason I wasn't logged in for a week. And it's going to go to this inbox and not yours. I see this inbox. And I'm really trying to avoid getting those messages because I'm not the person who can help that student. And it takes me a bit of time to like figure out who the instructor even actually is. So please just go into the intelligent agent tool, go to settings, and put your faculty email here. Once you've done this here in settings, it's going to apply to any one of the agents that you make in this course. So you can have 10 different reasons that it sends off automatic messages. All of them are going to be from this address. So it's central, but you'll have to do it course by course. I'm going to click save. Again, that was in the intelligent agent tool up here in settings. Once we've done that once, like I said, every other time we can just start creating new agents and defining why that agent exists. So I'm going to click new. We're going to give it a name. I'm going to do the same example that I had already created in this course shell, but by far, I think the best use case for intelligent agent is the agent that says, if the student hasn't logged in to this course, and I need to be careful about not saying login because it's access to this course in the last 5 days or 3 days or 7 days, I want them to get this email that looks like it came from me, and you can even personalize it so it has their first name and it can be very conversational. The name of the agent is not what students see. This isn't like the email subject or anything. This is just how I can find this particular item later. So this is like course access check. Same with description. It's not something a student would see, so don't worry about it. Then what we do down below is we set up some of the conditions. We set up some of the different moving pieces here. First of all, out of your full class list, which of the roles do you want this tool to pay attention to? Just students, then just check student, right? But it's pretty okay to leave this as visible. Sorry, any user that is visible in the class list, which means they were sort of explicitly enrolled either as an instructor, copy access, that sort of thing, right? Observer, student, accessibility services, that sort of thing. Well, only if instructors are not logging in. If you have multiple instructors, like a secondary instructor who is not actually expected to be in all that often, then yeah, you might want to filter down to just specific roles. Then you can basically decide what is the trigger for this thing. So the best use case for this is course activity, because again, you could do login, but that's system-wide. Yep, you're going to be able to, there was a private question in chat. I'll just summarize it briefly. Are you going to be able to set up these notices to start after the course starts? You can basically build this and then have it scheduled for the future. Absolutely. I'll get to the bottom of this editing screen and we'll see that. So course activity. Take action when the following course activity criteria are satisfied. Either the user has not accessed the course in a certain number of days, or the user has accessed the course in a certain number of days. If, typically I would say has not accessed. This is where I don't have to stick to 7. I could say 5 days or 3 days. Let's do 5 then, just to be different. Release conditions are different reasons you could set up this tool. And I'll talk more about release conditions after we're finished with this first example. But the first intelligent agent that I would almost always make is this one. It's the one that says, hey, you're not logging in. I want to send you a little poke and try to get you in a better habit. So all we've done is we've said, all right, only students are going to qualify. And it's based on not logging into this course, access to this course in 5 days. I can skip then the other types of conditions, which I'm not going to use here. Then we can decide whether or not this is going to send the same message to the same person multiple times if they qualify multiple times. Because we can run this so that it checks every week, right? If they hadn't logged in for the first 5 days in week 1, do we want them to get a message? And then if they also don't log in for the 5 days of week 2, do we want them to get this message again? In this particular case, I would say yes. So not only the first time, but every time a person qualifies, send them the poke again. Otherwise, they're only going to get it the first time they weren't around for 5 days and not all of the subsequent times. If you wanted to just stop there, then what we've done is we've created an agent that can be scheduled to run once a week, and it basically would give you a report. It would be the exact same message the second time, yeah. The message in this case will be written to be generic enough that's, hey, I haven't seen you in this long, please come back, and leave the other details out. Like you wouldn't say, hey, week 1, you need to be doing this, I haven't seen you, unless you wanted to make a different intelligent agent for each week, in which case you would say, take action only once, only the first time. And then it's not going to matter if they didn't log in again, because you have a separate agent to check that. If I stopped here, I would basically get a report for who qualified. Usually though, if you're taking the time to set up this intelligent agent, you also want it to reach out to those students for you. You don't want to necessarily have to send 10 different messages based on the 10 names you got back, right? So this is how we can do it. And you'll notice that because I changed my settings on that first screen, I now see my name and my email showing up here. You can actually create this agent, forget to change the first settings, and then go back and change the settings, and it's fine. This agent is going to update with that as well. So basically, here's what I would do. If you want to send this email to yourself as well, then do that. Just hard code in your own email address, right? No problem doing that at all. You want to be careful not to put all of your students' addresses here in the to field, just as a best practice, because then they'll see who else qualified, meaning they're all kind of called out on not logging in, and that's a bit of a privacy thing. So what we'll do is we'll put them all into BCC. But you may now be thinking, well, I don't know specifically what emails because I don't know who qualified. This is a dynamic thing. So we actually end up using a variable. You'll see here it says, what special email addresses can I use? Click on that. And we'll basically see the email that we want to use. We want the initiating user email. So whoever it was that qualified for our condition, which was we built it as hasn't logged in or hasn't accessed the course in 5 days. So we say initiating user, and we put that into BCC, meaning all of the people who qualify will have their email added here. This is a variable. Then we basically compose the message. I miss you. This is a silly example. Don't follow this. Hello, blank. And I'm going to come back to blank in a second. It looks like you haven't logged in this week. I have posted lots of content and really want you to see it. Hope. Let me know if something is wrong or how I can help. Hope to see you back online soon. I see some questions in chat. You can type initiating user, but you have to be really careful. The specific way that you type that in chat without a space wouldn't work. It has to be correct here in terms of no extra spaces and stuff like that. The way that I got initiating user here into the address box is by looking at the special addresses that I can use, and I copied and pasted it just so that I wasn't going to type it wrong. You could have also just typed it though if you were careful. But like if you accidentally put initiating user with a space, it's not going to work. If you spell initiating wrong, it's not going to work. If you put the wrong kinds of brackets here, it's not going to work. So I copy and paste just to be careful, but you didn't have to do that necessarily. I left a blank here for name as well, and you'll see here it says, what replace strings can I use in the subject and message? My favorite one, the one that I would be most likely to use here, is initiating user first name. If Johnny qualified, then Johnny's email is going to be here, and now Johnny's name is in the subject and the message. It says, I miss you, Johnny. Hello, Johnny. It looks like you haven't logged in this week. There's basically no way the student would know that you didn't just type this to them personally. And you don't have to tell them if you don't want to, that it wasn't quite so much work. But again, the benefit of this is, especially if you put your own email here, you're going to get the email, first of all, to tell you that at least one person has qualified. Yeah, the name is going to pass through to what they receive in Outlook, absolutely, was the question in chat. But not only that, but once this gets run, you're also going to see a report for who got the message, basically, right? The email part is just templated and out of your hands now, but the tool itself is still going to give you a list for everybody that qualified on a particular day. Now that I've got my criteria, and I've got my my message composed, if I scroll down to the very bottom, and you can also attach things to the email, etc. Scrolling down to the bottom, this is where we get into scheduling. Yes, I want to use a schedule, although you could always just run this manually however often you wanted. There's a manual option. Even if I schedule it, I can still manually run it. But if you want to just set it and forget about it, you would say use schedule, update schedule. I would just make these little pop-ups bigger. Even then I can't quite get it all, but how often do you want it to check? Do you want it to check daily, weekly, monthly, annually, maybe weekly? Every other week, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, every 1 week? What day of the week? What days of the week? Monday and Friday, Monday and Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, whatever. And then to the question earlier, could I create this now or create it during the summer for my fall course? Absolutely. You set your start date here for the future. So let's say I didn't want it to run until June. If I click update now, you can see, and I could always go back in and update the schedule. I can always save this and come back and update the schedule. But now that I've set it to be once per week on Sunday, starting on June the 1st, that means that it already has figured out that based on that schedule, the next time it's going to run on its own, completely hands off, is going to be the next Sunday, which will be the June the 7th. If I click save and close here, we're going to see this item listed. And again, you can create any number of these intelligent agents. Hasn't run yet, but it is scheduled to run. I could also click on this arrow right now and do a couple of interesting things. Oh, and a question in chat. Initiating user is going to be the email. Yes. When we created that, and the initiating user in brackets was the email address, even though it doesn't say initiating user email, it probably should have. Initiating user first name is the name. So the other one is definitely email. Now that I've created this, I could do a couple of things. I could say, hey, give me a practice run, and it tells you what that means. It means that it'll basically run it, but not send the emails. You can sort of see if it's set up properly. And what it does is it queues it up. It's not instantaneous, but it's pretty quick. It means that if you pick up a particularly busy day or something, that it might take a few minutes. I don't always do this, but today I had the presence of mind to run one earlier so that it wouldn't get stuck in a queue and I couldn't show you the results. So I did a very similar thing earlier today, and I ran this, and this is what you're going to see after it runs. So you'll see results of the last run. If I click here on 9 users identified, that means these are the 9 users that met the criteria, which in this case was hasn't logged in 5 days. So you can see everybody here. You'll also know if there was an email to take that it would have taken that, it would have sent that email. So I like intelligent agents because not only does it poke your students on your behalf, but you can sort of see it's already finished actually, the one that I queued up a minute ago. I could do the exact same thing. I can see no action was taken here. If it was a real email, then it would say, email sent. So that's the intelligent agent tool. For the last few minutes here, we're going to talk about release conditions. So the best use case for intelligent agent was just didn't log in. But there's actually hundreds of different triggers that you could set up that would also send messages. But those triggers can be used elsewhere as well. They can be used, for instance, in awards. They can be used in content. They can be used for announcements. So if we go into Course Tools Awards as an example. Okay, so Course Tools Awards. The reason, by the way, that you might want to set up an award is not necessarily that you think your student's going to like really go nuts over a badge, a digital badge. But the award can actually be set up to have 6 or 7 different criteria, basically like that checklist that we made, right? Except that it has to be things that the system can track. But then the system will automatically award the badge when students do qualify, and then students can see that, but also you can see that at a glance. So I'll show you what I mean. Let's say we wanted to go into, again, Course Tools Awards, and I'm going to go to the Course Awards tab here. There aren't any course awards available yet, although if I had created them in different courses of my own, I might have seen them here. However, I'm going to add a new award. I'm going to click Add Award, and we're going to say Create. You can see other examples of awards here that have just been shared, but it's almost never an exact fit, and it's just better to get in the habit of creating a new one. It's only going to take about 5 minutes anyways. So we go to Course Awards, Create. So what's the reason for this award? Again, the scope could be big or small. The scope could be everything for week 1, or it could just be related to the discussion tool, or it could be related to the discussion tool for week 1, or the discussion tool for the entire year, right? Like, it really depends on what you want to do. So I'm going to say, for instance, this is the week 1 completionist award. Did the student do everything they can possibly do in week 1? Is that not a word? All right. Well, I don't know. I guess it's not a word. I've been shamed by the autocorrect to not use that. Everything complete. Description here actually is required. Now, what I'm setting up right now is student facing. So students are going to be able to see this, so you will earn this award when you have completed all items in week 1, period. We're going to talk just about badges. Certificates are a different kind of scale and scope typically anyways. I'm absolutely going to be posting this this video. There was a question in chat about that. So everything that I've talked about is going to be up and available for you in a day or two. Completer. Is that a word? I'm going to have to do some research on that later. We have our name, we have our description, it's a badge. I'm going to make this available in all of my courses, but I wouldn't typically, again, check this box and say make it available to other people in other courses. I'm usually going to code this to be very specific. So here's the thing. You can do things like expiry date, fixed date. I would care about all that if I was setting up some renewed certificate, like a health and safety certificate. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about a really quick badge that just says, hey, did the student actually view every content page and post to the discussion and submit to the assignment? If so, give them a little thing that confirms it, and I can see that thing that confirms it at a glance. So I'm going to skip by all this nonsense about expiry. I could pick an award image. Again, we're talking about badges here. There actually is a pretty nice existing library to choose from. So I'm going to scroll down and be like, handshake, maybe. Actually, let me see what else I got. Light bulb, maybe. You can just kind of go safe with like a trophy. I'll do that. But again, you might want to think about picking a different one for each week. So I've got my title. I've got my reason. I click save and close. But it kind of like the checklist was like a two-step thing, like you make the badge and then you set up the items. That's what's going to happen here. We've made our badge, but we don't have any conditions yet. So no one's ever going to earn this. But we can set it up so that it will be automatically earned based on criteria. And this is what the thing that I was referring to as a release condition. If I click here on edit properties, we can see that there's an option for release conditions. I click create. And what we'll see here is that almost any tool that you would expect your student to interact with can be used as criteria to automatically unlock this badge. So first of all, let's say I wanted them to post to a discussion board. I could say, all right, criteria, right? Here I am in release conditions. Select the condition type. Discussions, okay. Did they post to a particular discussion? Yeah, that's the one that I want. So I say, yep, I want to choose this type. Then it says, great, which discussion do you want them to post to? In this case, I'm going to pick the introduce yourself here. You could even set a threshold. Did they post 1 time, 3 times, 10 times? You could create 3 badges for discussion. One that says discussion rookie, posted once. Another one that said discussion expert, posted 5 times. Another one that said discussion master, posted 10 times, right? You could have tiered badges if you wanted, because a lot of these criteria can be broken out in more detail. In this case, 1 post to the introduce yourself forum sounds good. And they had to create a new one, or they had to create and reply. New thread only. So they posted a new thread introducing themselves, create. That's one condition to unlock this badge, but that's not everything that they had to do in week 1. We can build basically a list and say all of these items are required. So again, I can say create. This time it's going to be based on content. Did they view content? By that, it just means did they visit it, right? So I say content, visited content topic, and I actually go page by page here. So which page did they view? In this case, under week 1, I wanted them to view week 1 lecture, right? Create. Then I can create another item. This one can be based on the assignment tool. Did they submit to the assignment folder, right? Here it is. Did they submit to the assignment folder? Then I can choose the specific assignment folder, assignment number 1, create. You'll notice here, because I have multiple conditions, it says all conditions can be met. You could also set up like an or statement. Did they do this or that? You can absolutely set up a checklist, or sorry, set up a badge based on a checklist. So let's add that as well. We go create. We say, hey, condition type, checklist. They had to complete the checklist. Not only did they do everything, they had to communicate with you by checking every box. That's how they get this badge. So which checklist? The week 1 checklist. Create. they had to post once, view a page, submit an assignment, and manually check every box on the checklist as well, meaning they're using that tool. I click save, and that's it. This thing is ready to go. The system's checking pretty regularly. Can you set up a future badge based on this badge? I knew the answer to that at once, and I don't remember now. I'm going to try. Level 2 badge. Basically, we can confirm this by making a thing. So completed week 1 and week 2. I'm going to say, what is it? What am I still missing here? I think I need an image. Book. Save and close. We can take a look in the criteria, right? If I go to edit properties, we go to create. I go to, yeah, awards. So you can have a future award that says they had to earn the week 1 everything complete badge before doing some other thing in addition to that. So you can build on these things without having to add the same items again. Although, if I wanted to do that more manually, I don't know why you'd want to do it more manually, but you can. You can actually, oh no, you can't even pick existing ones here. So yeah, you would definitely just want to reuse the award earned. Yeah, for sure. Here's the real advantage of this, right? Now that you've set this up, the system's going to be checking for all those conditions, and is really on the day of a student completing it, they're going to get a pop-up. Students can go to Course Tools Awards and they can see this at a glance. But the best part is now you can also go to Course Tools Awards and you can see your whole class list here, and you can see who's earned, for instance, the week 1 badge. Is this tied to a grade? No. But does it tell you a lot of information at a glance? Absolutely. It tells you that they did all those 5 things we just listed, right? And so setting this up is a little bit for them. Some students love badges. They're going to eat it up. Not everyone will. But even if they don't care, you've actually built a dashboard for yourself that has milestones that the system is checking for you, right? You can have awards based on grade level. They had to get a certain level of grade and all that stuff, right? Yeah, it's almost immediate. It's not exactly immediate though, but it's like within 5 minutes or so, the student will also get a notification. I think adult learners appreciate it. I mean, I'm not an instructor. I was an instructor before working at the college, but it's been enough years that I'm not confident enough to tell you. My experience is that a lot of adult learners are fine with it, or they kind of get a kick out of it. I don't think you're going to get too many people who actively push against it. Yeah, I mean, it's part of gamification. You check a box on your own resume that you're building in gamification, and the people who are motivated that are going to be motivated by that. Some people are not. That's definitely true. Yeah, you can use badges in ePortfolio. The other thing that students can do is they can actually export these badges to something like LinkedIn. Like, it really kind of depends on how you're setting them up and whether they're all that official and all that stuff. But there is a pathway where a student could take that badge that they've earned in your course and put it into LinkedIn if you've built an award that really shows they demonstrated a skill. You want to know about the custom tool I'm working on? All right, absolutely. So the other thing I'm going to say though, just before that, I'm going to spend like 2 minutes, and then the last minute, I'll show you the custom tool. The release conditions that we just used for the awards can be used elsewhere. You could set up an announcement that says, great job on week 1, you did it all. And you could have the same triggers in place so that students only get that announcement when they've qualified for it. If I click here on announcements and I go to new announcement, great job on week 1. You did everything. You are a completer. Apparently a word. Then at the very bottom of this announcement creation screen, you'll see that there's a section for release conditions. Well, guess what? When I was setting up that badge, I actually made 5 release conditions. I don't have to remake those every time. The system just knows them now. So I don't have to click create and attach, although I could. Now I can say attach existing. And look, here are my 5 things. And I can just say, yep, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. all the same stuff that basically triggered that badge are now going to post an announcement as well. Here is your reward, you know, YouTube link to funny cat video. And the student only gets this when they do all of the things. They get a badge, they get an announcement. You could also do the same thing with content. You could have a whole folder of bonus content that only gets released when they've met this criteria. So I'm just going to say publish here. That's that. The custom tool that I'm working on, it's going to look like this. It's going to sit on the home page of your course. Right now, you have a grade snapshot on your course. All that really does is it shows students what their current average is based on graded items. Now, this is what it's going to look like for students. It's going to show them their grades. I'm going to get to that in a second. It's going to give students a what-if calculator, meaning they can actually punch in values for future assignments to see how it would affect their final grade if they got that score. And I'm going to be showing students their very own content progress right on the home page of the course. So if a student hovers over grades hidden, they're actually going to see two grades. They're going to see their grade based on items that are already scored, and starting from 0, what have they actually earned towards their 100%. The what if calculator for the student is going to look like this. They're going to see every grade item. The things that they've already been scored on are locked in. The other things that they can slide over, or they can punch in a number and say, if I got 16 out of 20, what is my what if calculated grade? The instructor side of this is also going to show you some reporting. The instructor side is going to show you how many students haven't accessed in the last 7 days. What is your average grade? And how many of your students have viewed a certain percentage of content? You're going to be able to change settings in this widget that say, well, do I want it to be 7 days or do I want it to be 3 days? And instructors can also launch a what if calculator for each student. So if you're sitting down with them or you're communicating with them, you can run the numbers to say, hey, you need to get a 90 on this final project if you want to keep your grade. It's also going to highlight people who are at risk. The at risk is based on any number of criteria, like have they not logged in, have they viewed less content than the average by a certain amount, or can they no longer get a certain final grade? Because the tool is also going to show you what their best possible final grade is based on the scores that are already in. So I'm thinking this is going to be really useful for both instructors and for students. I'm super excited about it. I would have loved to have been able to develop this for this term, but the last 2 months have all been lots of other craziness. I would say look out for this in about two months, and it'll just be on every homepage, and we'll post announcements and things. So thanks so much for coming out, everyone. Like I said, that was a little bit jam-packed, and I know some of it was quick. Know that you will have a video of this that you can always kind of watch a little bit more slowly, and I hope you take advantage of that. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the afternoon, and also any of the other Tech at Conestoga workshops you're signed up for. I'm doing another one tomorrow about some custom tools that I built, not this one, but some content creation tools. So maybe I'll see you there, but there's lots of other good stuff to see. So I'm going to shut this down for now, but thanks so much for coming out.